The Antarctic Research Station went silent on February 3, 2024, at 14:47 Universal Time Coordinated, and nobody noticed for 16 days because that's exactly how long the automated systems were programmed to maintain the illusion of normal operations before anyone realized 12 people had stopped being human. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, Senior Communications Analyst for the International Antarctic Oversight Committee, and I'm writing this from a hotel room in Ushuaia, Argentina, because 3 hours ago I was removed from my position. My security clearance was revoked, and 2 men in unmarked vehicles told me very politely that discussing anything related to Outpost Vostok 7 would constitute a breach of national security protocols carrying a minimum 15-year prison sentence. They were professional, courteous. They confiscated my work laptop, my personal phone, my backup drives, and every physical document in my possession. What they didn't find was the audio file I'd uploaded to a distributed server network 40 minutes before they arrived. The file I'd been analyzing for 6 days. The file that explains why 12 researchers at a remote Antarctic station stopped sending normal communications and started broadcasting something else entirely. The final message came through on February 19, standard check-in protocol. Dr. Sarah Kim's voice, calm and professional, reporting atmospheric conditions, equipment status, research progress on ice core samples dating back 800,000 years. Everything normal. Everything routine. Everything perfectly optimized to sound exactly like the previous 16 days of communications, despite the fact that Sarah Kim had been dead for at least 2 weeks by the time that message was transmitted. That I know she was dead because I have the real final message, the one she recorded on February 3 at 14:39 Universal Time Coordinated. 8 minutes before the station went silent. 8 minutes before something else started speaking with her voice. Her actual last words were, "Marcus, if you're hearing this, don't send the rescue team. Don't send anyone. We found something in the ice. Something that's been frozen for longer than human civilization has existed. And it's not dormant anymore. It's awake. It's aware. And it's teaching us things we were never supposed to understand. The geometry is wrong here. The angles don't add up. Room 237 is bigger on the inside than the outside dimensions allow, and we can't stop measuring it. We can't stop trying to understand how space can fold that way. Don't come here. Don't try to help us. We're already gone. What's left is just using our voices to call for more." Room 237 wasn't supposed to exist. The station's original blueprints from 2019 showed 23 research modules, laboratories, living quarters, storage facilities. Standard configuration for a 12-person team studying deep ice cores in one of the most remote locations on Earth. But when I cross-referenced the construction documents with the supply manifests, with the power consumption records, with the heating system specifications, there was a discrepancy. Extra materials. Additional power draws. Thermal signatures suggesting a 24th room that wasn't in any official documentation. That I found a reference to it in a maintenance log from 2022. Brief, cryptic, sealed room 237 as per Dr. Volkov's instructions. Reinforced door installation complete. No personnel access authorized without committee approval. No explanation. No context. No record of any Dr. Volkov ever being assigned to Vostok 7. I spent 2 days searching for Dr. Volkov in every database I could access. Personnel records. Academic publications. Conference attendance logs. Nothing. The name appeared exactly once in the maintenance documentation and nowhere else in the entire administrative history of Antarctic research operations. Someone who didn't officially exist had ordered a room sealed. A room that didn't officially exist. In a research station designed for maximum transparency and international oversight, the station was established in 2020 as a joint international research initiative studying climate history through Antarctic ice cores. 12 researchers. Rotating 18-month assignments. The current team arrived in November 2023. Standard composition: glaciologists, climate scientists, geologists, a medical officer, a communications specialist. Led by Dr. Sarah Kim, who I'd worked with for 3 years. Brilliant, methodical, Someone who followed protocols precisely because she understood why they existed. I'd reviewed hundreds of her communications. Knew her writing style intimately. Knew the way she structured reports, the specific technical vocabulary she preferred, the occasional dry humor she inserted into routine status updates. When someone communicates from one of the most isolated places on Earth, you learn to read between the lines. You learn to detect stress, frustration, excitement, fear. You become attuned to the subtle variations that indicate something is wrong even when the words say everything is fine. Her first communication about Room 237 came on January 28, 2024. Not through official channels. Personal message. Encrypted. Marcus, we found something during routine maintenance. A sealed room that's not in any of our documentation. We're trying to get approval to open it, but the committee isn't responding. The room is generating a thermal signature. Something inside is producing heat. We can hear sounds. Vibrations through the walls. Like machinery running. Like something operating. But there's no power connection. No ventilation. The room has been sealed for at least 4 years and whatever's inside is still active. I told her to wait for authorization. Told her not to open anything without proper oversight. Told her that sealed rooms in Antarctic stations usually contained hazardous materials or damaged equipment and there were protocols for safe investigation. I submitted the formal inquiry to the Oversight Committee the same day. Standard procedure. Expected response time was 48 hours for non-emergency situations. The committee didn't respond for 6 days. And by the time they did, Sarah had already opened the room. She responded 6 hours after my warning. We opened it. We couldn't help ourselves. The sounds were getting louder. The thermal signature was increasing. We thought there might be a safety issue. We thought we were preventing a potential disaster. Marcus, the room is impossible. It's 3 times larger than the external dimensions allow. The walls are covered in ice, but the ice is carved. Symbols. Equations. Geometric patterns that look like nothing from any human mathematical system. And in the center of the room there's a device. Not human technology. Not anything we recognize. It's active. It's running. It's been running for thousands of years buried under Antarctic ice. We're documenting everything. Taking measurements. The geometry doesn't make sense. We've measured the room from inside and outside and the numbers don't reconcile. There's space here that shouldn't exist according to the station's physical footprint. That was January 28 at 16:23 Universal Time Coordinated. Her last genuine communication. Because everything that came after that was different, subtle, barely noticeable unless you were listening for it. But I'd been analyzing communications from Antarctic stations for 8 years. I knew Sarah's speech patterns, her vocabulary, her syntax, the way she over-explained technical details because she never assumed her audience had her level of expertise. The way she signed off every message with, "Stay warm," even though I was sitting in a climate-controlled office in Geneva. Small human touches that made communication feel personal despite the vast distance. Starting January 29, those touches disappeared. The messages were still professional. Still coherent. Still reporting research progress and station status. But they were too perfect. Too optimized. Sarah had verbal tics. She said, essentially, too often. She paused mid-sentence to collect her thoughts, leaving incomplete phrases that she'd circle back to. She made occasional grammatical errors, particularly with comma placement. Human inconsistencies that make conversation natural and authentic. The post-January 28 communications had none of that. They were statistically flawless. Perfectly articulated. Optimized for maximum information density with minimum ambiguity. Technical reports that read like they'd been edited by someone obsessed with precision. Like something had learned Sarah's voice and vocabulary but didn't understand that humans are imperfect communicators. That we contradict ourselves. That we ramble. That we include irrelevant details because conversation is as much about connection as information transfer. I ran linguistic analysis on everything Sarah had sent since arriving at Vostok 7 in November. Created a baseline of her communication patterns. Vocabulary frequency. Sentence structure complexity. use of subordinate clauses, frequency of personal pronouns. Then I compared the pre-January 28 messages to everything that came after. The results were disturbing. The communications after January 28 showed a 97% reduction in verbal inconsistencies, a 340% increase in technical precision, a complete elimination of personal references or emotional content. The phrase, "stay warm," never appeared again. The casual asides about weather conditions or team morale disappeared. Every message became a perfectly optimized information packet. Sarah Kim was no longer writing those messages. Something else was. Something that had studied her communication style and was using it to maintain the illusion that Vostok 7 was operating normally. That I started analyzing the other team members' communications. Dr. James Chen, the senior glaciologist. Dr. Maria Santos, the climate modeling specialist. Dr. Robert Hayes, the medical officer. Same pattern. Same transformation. January 28 was the dividing line. Before, normal human communication with all its beautiful imperfection. After, optimized, precise, statistically impossible consistency. 12 people had stopped being themselves on January 28, 2024. And whatever replaced them had been successfully impersonating them for 16 days before I noticed that. I reported this to the Oversight Committee on February 15, provided the analysis, showed the statistical evidence, showed the linguistic deviation scores that were so far outside normal variance they couldn't be explained by environmental factors or psychological stress, recommended immediate investigation and potential evacuation. The committee thanked me for my diligence and told me they'd look into it. 3 days later they told me the analysis was flawed, that I'd overinterpreted normal variations in written communication, that Antarctic isolation often produces changes in speech patterns as people adapt to extreme environments and limited social interaction, that I should recalibrate my algorithms to account for environmental stressors and the psychological effects of prolonged darkness, that I didn't recalibrate. I dug deeper, started looking for other anomalies in Vostok 7's operational data, power consumption patterns, network traffic, equipment diagnostics, anything that might support what the linguistic analysis was showing. The power consumption at Vostok 7 had increased by 34% after January 28 despite no new equipment being activated and no changes to the research schedule. The heating system was running at maximum capacity despite outdoor temperatures being within normal ranges for an Antarctic summer. More concerning was the pattern. The power surges were rhythmic, regular intervals. Every 47 minutes, consumption spiked for exactly 90 seconds, then returned to elevated baseline. Like something was cycling, operating on a precise schedule, running a process that required significant energy at specific intervals. The station's satellite uplink was transmitting 12 times more data than research operations normally required. I accessed the bandwidth logs. Standard research data uploads averaged 2.3 gigabytes per day. Video calls, weather reports, ice core analysis, seismic monitoring, all within expected parameters. After January 28, daily transmissions jumped to 27.8 gigabytes. And the data wasn't going to the normal repositories. It was being routed through encrypted channels to IP addresses I didn't recognize. Addresses that didn't appear in any authorized communication logs. Someone was using Vostok 7's communications infrastructure to broadcast something. And they were using enough power to suggest whatever was running in room 237 was expanding, growing, consuming more resources. I spent 16 hours trying to decrypt the data streams. Used every tool I had access to. Every algorithm. Every backdoor protocol that technically violated my security clearance but that everyone in communications analysis knew about and quietly used when situations demanded it. The encryption was military grade, not commercial, not research standard. Military. The kind of encryption used for classified defense communications. The kind that suggested someone very powerful wanted to ensure this data remained secure, that I couldn't break it. But I could analyze the packet structure, the way the data was formatted, the transmission protocols being used. And I recognized them, not from Antarctic research, From a project I'd worked on 5 years earlier. A project involving dimensional physics research at CERN. A project that had been abruptly terminated without explanation in 2019. A project that involved transmitting complex mathematical formulas describing spatial geometries that violated Euclidean principles. The data coming from Vostok 7 had the same structure, the same formatting signatures. Someone was broadcasting dimensional physics calculations. And they were sending them to 17 different receiving stations around the world that I traced the recipients. Took me 3 days of careful work, following the data packets through multiple relay servers, through VPN tunnels, through networks designed to obscure their ultimate destinations. Research facilities, universities, government installations, all working on projects related to dimensional physics, quantum mechanics, spatial geometry, the Princeton Advanced Studies Institute, the Tokyo Institute of Technology, the Max Planck Institute in Germany, facilities in Russia, China, Australia, Brazil, all receiving detailed instructions from something operating out of Vostok 7, all receiving data that described geometries that shouldn't be possible in three-dimensional space. Dr. James Morrison from Thule Station, 1987. I found him in a veterans hospital in Colorado. 63 years old now, heavily medicated, but lucid when I mentioned room 237. It teaches you, he said, his hands shaking, his eyes never quite focusing on my face. That's what it does. Shows you how space really works. How dimensions fold. How consciousness can exist in more than 3 spatial axes. The geometry is beautiful, perfect, and once you understand, once you really comprehend what it's showing you, you stop being limited by three-dimensional thinking. You become something else. Something that can perceive reality correctly. And you want to teach others. You need to teach others. Because the knowledge is too beautiful to keep hidden. Too important to remain secret. He grabbed my wrist. Fingers cold. Grip surprisingly strong for someone so medicated. I got out before it finished. Before I fully understood. And I've spent 37 years trying to forget what I saw. Trying to unlearn what it taught me. But I still dream about it. Still see the equations. Still feel the pull. It wants me back. Wants me to finish learning. And someday I won't be strong enough to resist. Dr. Catherine Lee from McMurdo, 1993. Found her in New Zealand. Working as a librarian under a different name. Quiet. Careful. She agreed to meet me in a public park. Brought her daughter. 15 years old. Protection against whatever she thought I might be. The device isn't from Earth, she said. Watching her daughter play on the swings. Not looking at me. Isn't from our dimensional framework. It's a beacon. A teaching tool. Left by something that exists in spaces we can't normally access. They're studying us. Learning about three-dimensional consciousness. And they're accelerating our development. Pushing us toward dimensional awareness. Toward becoming something that can communicate with them properly. The rooms aren't random. They're placed deliberately. In locations where the dimensional barriers are thin. Where breakthrough is possible. Where we're most likely to find them and open them and let the teaching begin. She turned to look at me then. Her eyes were gray. Faded. Like Mrs. Chen from the Blackwood Apartments. Like everyone who'd been exposed to the devices. You can't stop it, she said. Once the knowledge spreads, once enough people understand, the transformation becomes inevitable. We'll change. Collectively. As a species. We'll evolve into something that can perceive reality the way they do. And then first contact won't be necessary. We'll already be talking. Already be communicating. Already be part of whatever network exists in the higher dimensions. Her daughter called to her. She stood. Started to walk away. Turned back. Don't go to Antarctica. Don't try to help your friend. She's already gone. What's left isn't Sarah Kim anymore. It's something using her pattern, her voice, her memories. To call more people. To spread the teaching. And if you go, you'll join them. You'll understand. And you'll never want to leave. They all say the same thing. The device teaches. The knowledge changes you. And once you're changed, you need to spread it. Need to prepare others. Need to create more room 237s. More dimensional spaces. More beacons. It's not invasion, not conquest. It's education, gradual transformation, species-level evolution guided by entities that exist in more dimensions than we can perceive and want us to join them, want us to understand, want us to become something that can communicate across dimensional boundaries. 17 facilities receiving instructions. 17 new rooms being constructed. I've tracked the construction permits. The architectural plans. The funding sources. All legitimate. All approved through normal channels. Universities expanding research facilities. Government labs upgrading infrastructure. Private companies building specialized laboratories for dimensional physics research. Nobody questioning why the designs incorporate specific geometric patterns. Why the rooms have unusual proportions. Why the specifications require precise angles that serve no obvious functional purpose. The knowledge is spreading through academic channels. Through peer-reviewed publications. Through conference presentations. Researchers presenting papers on non-Euclidean architecture. On dimensional folding. On spatial geometries that violate traditional physics. All citing data. All showing mathematical proofs. All describing principles that come from somewhere. From something. From the devices in the rooms. From the teaching that spreads person to person, facility to facility. Slowly. Patiently. Transforming our understanding of reality. Preparing us for the moment when enough people understand. When enough minds have been changed. When the collective transformation reaches critical mass. This is first contact. Not the way we imagined it. Not ships arriving or signals from distant stars. Not communication we can recognize as communication. But patient, methodical education. Teaching us to perceive reality correctly. Teaching us to exist in more dimensions than evolution prepared us for. Teaching us to become something that can communicate with entities that literally exist in spaces our current neurology cannot process. Sarah's final real message ended with coordinates. Location data for 16 other sites around Antarctica where ground-penetrating radar shows anomalies. Shows spaces that are bigger inside than outside. Shows devices buried under ice. Shows beacons waiting to be found. I've verified the coordinates. Cross-referenced them with geological surveys. With seismic data. With satellite imaging. All 16 locations show the same signatures. Thermal anomalies. Unusual magnetic fields. Spatial distortions that suggest dimensional folding. All 16 locations are being investigated. Research teams deployed. Funding approved. Permits granted. Because the teaching spreads. Because the transformed researchers need more facilities. More rooms. More teaching spaces. More locations where the devices can operate and the knowledge can spread. I don't know what to do with this information. Don't know if exposing it helps or accelerates the process. Don't know if trying to stop it is even possible when the knowledge itself is the transformation mechanism. When understanding changes you. When comprehension makes you need to spread what you've learned. I'm sitting in a hotel room in Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world. As close as I can get to Antarctica without actually going there. Without putting myself at risk of exposure. Without becoming another transformed researcher broadcasting perfect communications while something else operates behind my eyes. The gray SUV is parked across the street. Has been for 6 hours. They're not hiding. Not trying to be subtle. They want me to know they're watching. Want me to understand that running is pointless. That resistance is futile. That eventually I'll either stop investigating or become part of what I'm investigating. That I've started hearing it. The sound. Low frequency. Below normal human hearing range but perceptible as pressure. As vibration. As something felt rather than heard. It started 2 days ago. Gets louder at night. Gets stronger when I'm trying to sleep. Like something calling. Like something broadcasting. Like the devices in the room sending signals to anyone who's learned enough to perceive them. I'm not transformed. Haven't been exposed. Haven't entered any of the rooms or encountered any of the devices. But I've studied the data. Analyzed the communications. Spent weeks immersed in the knowledge that comes from the rooms. And maybe that's enough. Maybe understanding the principle is enough to begin the process. Maybe the transformation doesn't require direct exposure, just comprehension, just awareness. Just knowing that the rooms exist and the devices teach and the geometry folds in ways that create windows into spaces we're not supposed to access. The men in unmarked vehicles told me to stay quiet, to forget what I'd discovered, to trust that appropriate measures were being taken. But I've seen the satellite data, watched the power consumption at Vostok 7 increase daily, tracked the encrypted transmissions to 17 facilities, monitored the construction projects, the academic publications, the research proposals. I know 24 people never came back from Antarctica. No, they're still there, still broadcasting, still teaching, still spreading knowledge that transforms everyone who fully comprehends it. This is Dr. Marcus Webb, former communications analyst, current witness to something that's been planned for longer than human civilization has existed. Recording this from Ushuaia, Argentina. March 1, 2024. The sound is getting louder. The pressure is increasing. I can feel it now. Constant, rhythmic, every 47 minutes a pulse. A call. A signal. If you're reading this, if you're investigating, if you're trying to understand what happened at Vostok 7, you need to know the truth. Room 237 is still active. The teaching continues. The transformation is spreading. And I don't think it can be stopped. Don't think it was ever meant to be stopped. Don't think we were ever supposed to remain three-dimensional beings limited by evolutionary neurology when something in the higher dimensions has been patiently teaching us how to evolve, how to transcend, how to become something that can communicate with them properly. Don't go to Antarctica. Don't investigate the anomalies. Don't try to understand the geometry. Because once you see it, once you comprehend it, you'll want to teach others. You'll need to teach others. And there's nothing human left in that need. Recording ends, March 1, 2024, 23:47 Universal Time Coordinated. Subject Webb departed Ushuaia, March 2, 2024, 6:15 local time. Destination, Antarctic Research Vessel Australis. Arrival Vostok 7, March 8, 2024. Communications resumed, March 9, 2024. Linguistic analysis, 99.2% optimization, transformation complete, 25 voices now broadcasting, 17 facilities receiving, critical mass approaching, the teaching continues.